Vaquero solitario salva a novia empapada que se desmayó en su porche después de 10 años en soledad. The Martian sky was dark and heavy with storm clouds. Red dust whipped across the barren landscape, scratching at the domed windows of Mateo Navarro's home. 10 years had passed since he had last stepped foot in a colony market. 10 years since he had spoken to another human beyond the occasional radio call. He had chosen this life of solitude after losing everyone he cared about in a raid years ago. He had learned that trust could be deadly on Mars, and isolation had become his shield. Mateo was a tall, rugged man. His face was tanned and lined from years in the sunless Martian storms. His eyes sharp and alert. Though he had lived alone for a decade, his mind had never stopped learning. He had built his small dome from scratch, reinforced it against dust storms, and rigged it with drones and sensors that patrolled the perimeter. His home was simple but efficient, a blend of old-world craftsmanship and advanced Martian technology. Inside, the dome was warm, filled with the soft hum of energy collectors and the faint smell of recycled air. Mateo worked quietly, repairing one of the drones that had returned damaged from its patrol. His hands were skilled, calloused from years of building, fixing, and surviving. Outside, the storm intensified, making the world beyond the dome almost invisible. The red sands twisted into small tornadoes, and the distant cliffs disappeared into the swirling dust. Suddenly, Mateo noticed something unusual on his porch. At first he thought it was a trick of the storm, a shadow cast by shifting sand. But then he saw movement. A figure lay slumped against the railing. Mateo's heart quickened, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. He grabbed a thermal blanket from a nearby shelf and rushed outside. The wind tore at him, throwing grit into his face, but he pushed forward. The figure was a woman soaked through from the acidic rain that had begun to fall. Her clothes clung to her thin frame, her hair plastered to her face. She was unconscious, her breathing shallow but steady. Mateo lifted her carefully, wrapping her in the blanket. She was light for her size, but weak, clearly exhausted from exposure. Hey, you're safe now, he muttered, his voice rough but gentle. Come on. Inside. The storm howled around them as he carried her into the dome. The warmth enveloped her immediately, and Mateo set her down on a cot. He checked her pulse and breathing. They were steady, but she would need rest. Mateo glanced at her face. Even through the grime and the wet hair, he could see that she was beautiful, with sharp eyes and a determined expression. She looked almost out of place on the harsh, lonely world of Mars. He could tell she had been through a lot. As he worked to remove her soaked clothes and replace them with dry ones, he muttered to himself, "Who are you? What happened?" The woman stirred slightly but did not wake. Mateo sighed and decided to prepare a hot nutrient drink for her. He poured the glowing red liquid into a metal cup, careful not to spill. He handed it to her when she opened her eyes. "Drink this. It will help you recover," he said. Her eyes met his, wide and frightened. I don't know where I am," she whispered. "You're safe," Mateo replied. "This is my home. I live here, alone." The woman's gaze softened, though a flicker of fear remained. I was caught in the storm. I didn't know where to go." Mateo nodded. He understood storms. He had survived countless dust storms, acid rains, and wind tunnels that could shred metal. He had faced death more times than he could count, and yet here was someone younger, weaker, and afraid, and he could not let her face the same danger. "I'm Mateo Navarro," he said. "I keep to myself. But you need help." The woman swallowed the drink slowly. "I'm Isabella. Thank you." Her voice was faint but firm. "I don't know how I ended up here, but I think someone was following me. Mateo stiffened. Raiders. He had not heard of organized raiders for years, but the settlements were not always safe. Bandits and thieves still roamed the Martian canyons, taking whatever they wanted. "Tell me everything," he said. Isabella nodded, her hands shaking slightly. "I was delivering supplies to the neighboring colony. Someone attacked the route. I ran, but the storm came and I couldn't keep going." Mateo's mind raced. He had survived alone, yes, but he had learned to fight when necessary. He had trained his body and his mind for moments like this. Helping Isabella would be dangerous, but he could not leave her out there.
"Not now. You're safe here,"
he said firmly. "For now, but we need to plan. The storm will pass, and when it does, whoever is after you might not have given up." Isabella nodded again, fear and relief mingling on her face. She looked around at the dome, at the drones that silently hovered near the walls.
You
live alone here?" "I have for 10 years," Mateo admitted. After a raid killed my friends, I couldn't stay. I couldn't trust anyone. I thought maybe solitude was the only way to survive." Isabella's expression softened. 10 years.
"That's a long time." "Yes," Mateo said, "but it keeps me alive."
Keeps me sane. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the storm batter the dome. Mateo watched her, noticing how tense she was, how fragile yet determined she seemed. He felt something he had not felt in years, a flicker of care, of human connection. Finally, Isabella spoke. Why did you help me?" Mateo hesitated. He had learned not to trust easily, not to let attachments form, but there was something about her, something that reminded him that humans were stronger together than alone. "Because I can," he said simply, "and because you deserve to survive." Isabella's eyes shone with gratitude. "Thank you, Mateo." The storm began to ease, though the sky remained dark. Red lightning flashed across the horizon, illuminating the harsh Martian landscape. Mateo rose and checked the perimeter drones. All were operational, scanning the sands for movement. He felt a twinge of worry. Raiders were persistent, and if they had been following Isabella, they might still be close. "We need to rest," he said. "Tomorrow we'll figure out our next move. For now, eat something, drink this, and try to sleep." Isabella obeyed, drinking the nutrient liquid slowly and nibbling on some synthesized protein bars. Mateo watched her carefully, making sure she was not too weak or injured. He felt a strange sense of responsibility, one he had avoided for a decade. As night fell, the dome lights cast a warm glow across the interior. The storm outside still raged faintly, but inside it was calm. Mateo sat near the entrance, watching the red sands twist in the fading wind. He thought about the last 10 years, his solitude, his survival, and the emptiness that had filled his days. Now, with Isabella in his home, things had changed. He could feel it. The quiet life he had built was no longer enough. Something had shifted. Something human had returned after a long absence. He glanced at her sleeping form. She looked peaceful, unaware of the dangers that might still be approaching. Mateo made a silent promise. He would protect her, no matter what. It was time to step out of solitude, to face the world again, and to rediscover what it meant to be human. The storm outside began to fade, leaving a thick red mist over the sands. But inside the dome, warmth and light glowed, and for the first time in 10 years, Mateo Navarro felt something he had thought lost forever: hope. The next morning, the Martian sky was a dull orange, streaked with dust clouds. The storm had passed, leaving the red sands wet and sticky, shimmering faintly under the weak sunlight. Mateo Navarro woke early, as always, checking his perimeter drones. They had returned without any damage, scanning the surrounding landscape for threats. He turned to look at Isabella. She was awake, sitting on the cot, brushing the wet strands of hair from her face. Her eyes were sharp, alert, and filled with a mixture of relief and curiosity. Mateo noticed how cautious she was, still unsure of this strange man who had saved her life. "Good morning," Mateo said, his voice calm but firm. "How do you feel?" Isabella rubbed her shoulders. "Better, much better. Thank you for last night. I don't know what would have happened if you weren't here." Mateo nodded, trying not to show the faint smile that tugged at his face. "You're welcome. But you need to tell me everything. Who was following you? Why?" Isabella hesitated. Her lips pressed together as she thought. I don't know exactly who they are, but there's been a series of attacks on couriers carrying rare minerals. I was delivering a package to the next colony, but something went wrong. I think someone wanted the cargo for themselves." Mateo's mind immediately shifted into strategy mode. Raiders, supply theft, targeting couriers, these were signs of organized attacks, not random violence. He had faced raiders before, years ago, but this was different. They were using the storm to cover their tracks, and Isabella had been caught right in the middle.
"You're lucky the storm came," Mateo said quietly. "If you hadn't stumbled onto my dome, they would have caught you."
Or worse. Isabella shivered at the thought. I don't know how I survived. I was running and then everything went dark. Mateo placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "You're safe now, but we can't stay here forever. They might come after you once they realize you survived." Isabella nodded slowly, her fear mixing with determination. She glanced around the dome, taking in the drones, the solar collectors, and the strange gadgets Mateo had built.
"You live alone here."
"For 10 years? How do you do it?" Mateo shrugged. "I survived. That's all. Solitude keeps me alive, keeps me focused. People can get in the way or get killed."
Her eyes softened. "I'm sorry for what happened."
"You've been alone for so long. It must be hard." "It is," Mateo admitted, "but it's also simple. You don't have to worry about anyone else, only yourself. Until now." He paused, looking at her. "Until now, I never thought I would care about anyone again." Isabella blinked. "Until now?" Mateo looked away. He wasn't used to admitting feelings, even to himself.
You survived a storm I couldn't control. That
Changes things. They ate a simple breakfast, rehydrated protein bars and nutrient drinks. Mateo watched her carefully, making sure she had enough energy to move and think. Then he decided it was time to learn more about the threat. "Show me what you are carrying," Mateo said, pointing to her small pack. Isabella handed him a compact crate. It was light, but clearly filled with valuable minerals, glowing faintly from the Martian sunlight. Mateo examined it carefully. The rare minerals were crucial for colony technology, especially energy collectors and drone power cores. Losing them could cripple a settlement.
"These are important," Mateo said, "and they are valuable."
"Whoever is after you won't stop easily." Isabella bit her lip. "I know. That's why I ran. I didn't want to lose the shipment or my life."
Mateo nodded. "Good.
That means you're brave. But courage alone won't keep us alive. We need a plan. He paused, thinking. Do you know where they might come from? The raiders? Isabella shook her head.
No. They strike fast, then disappear into the canyons or storms.
Nobody knows who they are. I just ran. Mateo's eyes narrowed. He had survived Martian storms, wild animals, and bandits before, but organized raiders were dangerous. They used stealth, speed, and fear. If they were skilled enough to follow a courier during a storm, they were dangerous indeed.
We'll need to move carefully, he said. We can't let them find us here.
But we can't hide forever. You need to reach the next colony safely. Isabella's eyes widened. I thought I was safe with you. Are you saying we need to leave? Mateo nodded. I'm saying we need to think ahead. They'll come looking, and if they do, we'll need to be ready. She swallowed nervously. Do you think they'll hurt us? Mateo placed a reassuring hand on hers. Not if we stay smart.
We've survived the storm. That was your first test.
Now comes the second. They spent the next few hours preparing. Mateo checked the drones, reinforced the dome's sensors, and set improvised traps around the perimeter. He taught Isabella how to use a compact stun weapon he had built from salvaged parts. She learned quickly, surprising him with her steadiness and focus. You're faster than I expected, Mateo said, a hint of admiration in his voice. Isabella smiled faintly. I've had to be. Life on the colonies isn't easy. You learn quickly, or you die. Mateo nodded. Good. That attitude will help us. By mid-afternoon, the storm clouds had cleared completely. The red sand stretched endlessly in every direction, barren and harsh. Mateo and Isabella stepped outside, testing the terrain. He noticed tracks in the sand. Fresh tracks. Raiders. They had been nearby. They're close, Mateo said quietly. We need to move before they decide to follow your trail. Isabella's pulse quickened. Can we outrun them? Mateo studied the horizon. The Martian canyons were treacherous, full of cliffs and sharp rock formations. Not outrun, he said. Outsmart them. Follow me. They mounted his rugged, all-terrain rover, a vehicle Mateo had built himself. It hummed quietly as it moved across the sand, its treads gripping the uneven terrain. Isabella held on tightly as they sped toward the canyon network, Mateo navigating with precision and care. Along the way, he explained the dangers. The raiders use storms and shadows to hide. They strike fast. We need to use the terrain to our advantage. Canyons, cliffs, even the sandstorms. They can all be traps for them if we are careful. Isabella listened intently. I never realized Mars could be so dangerous outside the colonies. Mateo glanced at her. Danger is everywhere. But humans survive. That's what makes us strong. Adaptation, courage, and teamwork. You've shown courage today. Now it's time to learn adaptation. They drove for hours, weaving through jagged cliffs and narrow ravines. Mateo's experience and instinct kept them safe. He pointed out possible ambush points, teaching Isabella how to recognize danger before it appeared. She absorbed every word, her fear giving way to focus and determination. As night fell, they found shelter in a small cave system. Mateo set up sensors and traps, ensuring no one could sneak up on them. He gave Isabella a place to rest while he patrolled outside, his eyes scanning the horizon. The silence was broken only by distant winds and the faint glow of the Martian sky. Mateo thought about the past 10 years, the loneliness that had defined him, and the strange sense of connection he now felt. Isabella had entered his life during a storm, bringing both danger and hope. When he returned to the cave, Isabella was waiting.
You're awake,
She said softly.
do.
I never sleep for long, Mateo replied. Not when danger is near. She nodded. I don't know how to thank you. You saved my life twice already. First the storm, now this. Mateo looked at her, his eyes serious. You survive because you have courage. That's your thanks. And because it's the right thing to do. We humans, we survive together, not alone. That's something I've forgotten. Isabella smiled faintly, feeling the weight of his words. I'm glad I met you, Mateo. Even if it was in a storm cave above. He looked out at the red sands beyond the cave entrance. I'm glad too. But the storm isn't over yet. Raiders are still out there, and the path ahead is dangerous. Tomorrow, we fight for your safe passage. But tonight, we survive. They shared a quiet meal, speaking little but sharing understanding. Two humans, alone on a harsh world, learning trust and cooperation again. The Martian night stretched on, and the stars shone cold and distant. But inside their small shelter, warmth and hope flickered. Mateo realized that this moment, this chance to protect someone again, was more than survival. It was a reminder that humanity was more than strength or skill. It was courage, compassion, and the bonds we build when life is hardest. Tomorrow would bring danger, planning, and action. But tonight, they were alive. And alive together. The sun rose faintly over the Martian horizon, casting the red sands in shades of gold and copper. Mateo Navarro and Isabella emerged from the cave, ready to continue their journey. The storm had passed, but the tracks in the sand showed that the raiders were still nearby. Mateo's eyes scanned the terrain carefully, noticing the faint depressions and patterns that told a story only experience could read. They're tracking us, Mateo said, pointing to the tracks. They know we're here, but they don't know where we're heading. Isabella nodded, gripping her small pack tightly. Then we have to move fast. Mateo gave her a brief nod. Fast, yes. Smart, more important. We use the canyons. The rocks, the cliffs. They hide us and give us the advantage. The raiders rely on speed and surprise. We turn that against them. They mounted Mateo's rover, a rugged vehicle built for the harshest Martian terrain. It hummed to life, its treads gripping the sand as they accelerated into the canyon network. Mateo navigated through jagged cliffs and narrow passageways, teaching Isabella how to anticipate sudden drops and obstacles. She listened intently, absorbing every lesson like a sponge. You have a natural instinct, Mateo remarked. Most people panic in these conditions. You don't. Isabella smiled faintly. I've had to survive before. Life on the colonies isn't safe. You either adapt or die. Mateo nodded. He admired her courage. Humans had a strange ability to endure, to learn quickly under pressure, and Isabella was proving that today. Hours passed as they maneuvered through twisting canyons and vast open plains. Mateo used every trick he knew: sand traps, sudden decoys, and drone patrols that mimicked movement to mislead any pursuers. Isabella's quick mind helped him adapt, suggesting small adjustments to the rover's route that kept them out of obvious danger. I never thought I'd rely on someone else, Mateo admitted quietly. 10 years alone, I forgot what it feels like to trust another human. Isabella glanced at him.
You can trust me.
I want to survive too, and I want to help you. Mateo's lips pressed together. He wasn't used to sharing responsibility or depending on anyone else. But here in the harsh Martian desert, he realized that survival was stronger when shared. By late afternoon, they reached a vast salt flat, shimmering under the fading sun. It was beautiful but deadly. The surface looked smooth, but beneath the thin crust, the ground could give way into deep crevices. Mateo stopped the rover. This is tricky, he said. We have to cross carefully. If the raiders are watching, they might think it's easy. Then we lure them into traps. Isabella's eyes lit up with understanding. A trap. Smart. Let's do it. Mateo set up a few sensors around the edges of the salt flat. They could detect vibrations and movement, giving them warning if anyone approached. Then, using small, portable explosives he had built, he arranged a decoy that would create a dust cloud if triggered. Ready? Mateo asked. Isabella nodded. Let's go. They drove slowly across the salt flat, every sound magnified in the silence. The rover hummed softly, tires skimming over the fragile surface. Mateo kept his eyes on the sensors, adjusting the route as needed. They reached the center without incident. Then, suddenly, a cloud of red dust rose behind them. "Raiders!" Mateo shouted. Several figures appeared, sleek and fast, riding all-terrain bikes and armed with energy rifles. They had followed the tracks carefully, underestimating the duo's intelligence. Mateo smiled faintly. Just as I thought. They expect speed, not strategy. He pressed a button on his rover, triggering the first decoy. A cloud of red dust erupted, hiding their true position. Isabella ducked low, her heart pounding but her hands steady. Mateo guided the rover into a narrow canyon opening, leaving the raiders confused in the dust.
They're fast, but not smart, Mateo muttered. And we have the advantage of terrain.
Watch for ambush points. The chase intensified as the raiders tried to follow them through the twisting canyons. Mateo used every trick: sudden drops, hidden crevices, and the occasional drone decoy that appeared ahead of the raiders to mislead them. Isabella remained calm, following Mateo's lead, learning quickly how to anticipate danger. At one point, a raider bike appeared around a corner, its energy rifle aimed directly at them. Mateo swerved sharply, kicking up sand to blind the attacker. Isabella fired a small stun device which arced across the canyon and knocked the raider off balance. Mateo glanced at her. "Good shot," she nodded, adrenaline surging. "We have to survive." Hours passed in this tense game of cat and mouse. The Martian sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the red rocks. Mateo guided Isabella to a hidden cave system previously used by miners long ago. It was narrow and well hidden, a perfect place to rest and plan. Inside the cave, Mateo set up sensors and traps, ensuring they would have warning if anyone tried to follow them. Isabella examined the equipment, fascinated. "You've thought of everything," she said softly. Mateo shrugged. "Experience and necessity. You can't survive 10 years on Mars without learning to expect the unexpected." They ate a quiet meal, rehydrated bars and nutrient drinks, their conversations sparse but meaningful. Mateo studied Isabella as she rested. She had faced fear with courage, acted quickly under pressure, and shown intelligence that impressed even him. In a world where survival was rare, she had proven herself a worthy ally. "You're stronger than I thought," Mateo said finally. Isabella smiled faintly. "So are you. 10 years alone, and you still survive." That's impressive. Mateo's lips pressed together.
I survive because I have to. But it's different now.
You're here, and that changes things. She looked at him, curiosity and something softer in her eyes. Changes things? Yes, Mateo said quietly. I've spent 10 years alone, avoiding connection, avoiding risk. But now I care about keeping you alive. I care about what happens next. That's something I thought I had lost forever. Isabella reached out, touching his arm lightly. Then we survive together. Whatever comes, we face it as a team. Mateo nodded, feeling a rare warmth in his chest. For 10 years, he had thought he was stronger alone. Now he realized that humanity, the courage, trust, and connection between people was what made them truly strong. As night fell, they listened to the winds outside, distant howls of Martian storms echoing across the canyons. Mateo checked the sensors once more. No immediate threats, but he knew the raiders would not give up easily. Tomorrow, the chase would continue. But tonight, they were safe, together, learning what it meant to survive as humans. They slept in shifts, Mateo keeping watch while Isabella rested. His mind wandered to the past, the years of solitude and the emptiness that had defined him. Now, for the first time in a decade, he felt hope. A spark of connection that reminded him why humans were resilient, why humanity endured against impossible odds. Morning arrived quietly. The Martian sky was pale orange and streaked with faint clouds. Mateo and Isabella prepared to move again. They had survived the first real encounter, but the raiders would not give up. The path ahead was dangerous, full of unknowns, but they were ready. Mateo handed Isabella a compact rifle, checking its energy levels. We move carefully, he said. The next leg will be trickier. Raiders are fast, but we are smarter. And together we are stronger than they expect. Isabella nodded, determination in her eyes. Let's do it. With the Martian canyons stretching before them, red and golden under the rising sun, the duo set off once more. The chase across the crimson sands had only begun, and both knew that survival would test everything they had: skill, courage, and the bond forming between them. For Mateo Navarro, 10 years of solitude had prepared him for this moment. And for Isabella, courage and quick thinking would prove that humans were strongest when they trusted and helped each other. The Martian landscape was harsh and unforgiving, but the two humans moved together, ready to face whatever came next. And for the first time, Mateo realized that survival was not just about living, it was about protecting, teaching, and connecting. Humanity, in its rawest form, was more than strength. It was hope. The faint Martian sun cast long shadows across the crimson canyons as Mateo Navarro and Isabella approached the nearest settlement. The colony was small but fortified, a cluster of domes and solar collectors connected by narrow walkways. Smoke from the energy reactors curled into the thin atmosphere, marking it as alive, busy, and prepared. Mateo slowed the rover, scanning the perimeter. "We're close," he said. "This colony has defenses, people, and resources, but they're not ready for what's coming." Isabella peered over the rover's edge, her eyes wide. "The raiders, do you think they'll attack here?" Mateo's jaw tightened. "If they find out we're carrying those minerals, yes. They want the shipment, and they want to scare the settlers. They'll strike fast, and they'll use every advantage. We can't let that happen." He parked the rover just outside the outer perimeter and hopped off. moving silently toward the main dome. Isabella followed, clutching her pack tightly. Matteo had taught her well. Her steps were careful, measured, almost instinctual. He noticed how far she had come since the storm and the chase across the crimson sands. Inside the main dome, the settlers bustled with routine tasks, repairing machinery, organizing supplies, communicating with distant outposts. Matteo stepped forward, raising his hand slightly in a gesture of peace. "I'm Matteo Navarro," he said firmly. "This is Isabella. We need your help. Raiders are tracking her. They're after a shipment of rare minerals, and they won't stop at nothing to get it." The settlers froze for a moment, assessing him. Then a tall woman with a braided ponytail stepped forward. "I'm Commander Lucia. You expect us to believe you can handle these raiders?" Matteo met her gaze steadily. "I've survived raiders before. I know their tactics, their speed, their weaknesses. With your help, we can defend the colony and protect the minerals. Alone, Isabella and I might survive for a while, but together we can win." Lucia studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded sharply. "All right, we'll help. But the people and the colony come first. We fight together or not at all." Matteo's lips pressed together. "Agreed." The settlers quickly mobilized under Matteo's guidance. They positioned defensive turrets along the colony's perimeter, set motion sensors in the sand dunes, and reinforced the dome's energy shields. Isabella assisted wherever she could, using her knowledge of the minerals and the shipment to organize secure storage areas. By late afternoon, the preparations were complete. The colony was ready, but the tension was palpable. Red dust stirred in the distance, and Matteo could sense the raiders approaching. He gathered the settlers and Isabella in the central hub. "Listen carefully," he said. "The raiders are fast, but they underestimate human intelligence and teamwork. We'll use that. We have traps, sensors, and high ground. Stay alert, communicate, and follow instructions. Together we are stronger than they expect." The first silhouettes appeared on the horizon. Sleek bikes glinting in the weak sunlight, dust trailing behind them. The raiders had come prepared, armed with energy rifles and fast vehicles. Matteo's heart raced, but he did not show fear. This was the moment he had prepared for. Settlers and volunteers took their stations, some on elevated walkways, others behind energy shields. Isabella stayed close to him, her hands steady, her eyes sharp. The raiders charged forward, expecting an easy strike, but as they entered the outer perimeter, motion sensors triggered alarms and hidden traps detonated, kicking up clouds of dust and sand. Matteo guided Isabella to a vantage point where she could help monitor the battlefield, directing fire and signaling raider movements. The raiders adjusted quickly, but Matteo had anticipated this. The settlers, coordinated by his instructions, used drones to flank and distract the attackers. Energy rifles fired in synchronized bursts, forcing the raiders to retreat and regroup. The first wave was repelled, and Matteo knew the real test was still ahead. "Good work," he said quietly to Isabella. "But this isn't over. They'll come again." Hours passed in tense skirmishes. The raiders tried every tactic, flanking, feints, even attempting to lure Matteo and Isabella into traps outside the domes. Each time, Matteo anticipated their moves, using the terrain, drones, and clever tactics to protect the colony. Isabella proved invaluable, her quick thinking helping reroute defenders and guide counterattacks. At one point, a raider managed to breach a side entrance, sneaking into a storage area. Matteo and Isabella responded immediately. Using the rover, they blocked the exit and trapped the raider inside. Matteo confronted him directly. "You've underestimated us," Matteo said. The raider glared, aggressive and defiant. "Humans are clever, strong, and resilient. You'll find we survive against odds you think impossible. Isabella restrained the raider, her hands steady, her voice firm. Your fight is over. Leave now, or we call the rest of the colony. The raider realized the futility of his position. With a final glare, he activated a signal to retreat. Outside, the remaining attackers began to pull back, their formation breaking under the coordinated defense. Matteo and Isabella had turned the tide. When the last raider vanished over the dunes, silence fell across the colony. Settlers emerged from their stations, some cheering, others simply relieved. Matteo looked at Isabella. "We did it," he said softly. She smiled, a mixture of exhaustion and pride on her face. Together, that's what made the difference. Commander Lucia approached Matteo. "You were right. Alone, they might have won. But together, humans are unstoppable." Matteo nodded. "It's more than strength or weapons. It's courage, ingenuity, and trust. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us strong." Isabella stepped beside him. "I've learned more in these past days than I thought possible. Survival isn't just about running or hiding. It's about standing together and facing what comes." The settlers gathered around, celebrating quietly. For Matteo, it was more than a victory. It was a reminder of something he had forgotten in his 10 years of solitude: the power of community, the strength of human connection, and the courage that came from protecting and being protected. As night fell, the Martian sky glowed faintly with the aurora-like shimmer caused by solar winds interacting with the thin atmosphere. Matteo and Isabella stood outside watching the distant dunes. "The storm has passed," Matteo said, "but this is just the beginning. There will be more challenges ahead. We'll face them together." Isabella nodded. "I wouldn't want to face them with anyone else." Matteo looked at her, a faint smile touching his lips. 10 years of loneliness had taught him survival. These past days had taught him something more. Humanity wasn't just about endurance. It was about courage, connection, and the determination to protect others, no matter the cost. The colony lights glowed softly in the darkness, a beacon of hope against the harsh Martian landscape. For the first time in a decade, Matteo Navarro felt that hope deeply, fully, and without hesitation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new adventures, and perhaps even new dangers. But tonight, the colony stood united, humans proving that ingenuity, courage, and cooperation could overcome even the harshest threats. Matteo turned to Isabella, their hands brushing briefly. "We've survived storms, chased across canyons, and defended a colony. Tomorrow we continue, stronger than before." Isabella smiled, her eyes reflecting determination and trust. "We'll face whatever comes, together." And as they looked out across the Martian dunes, two humans, once alone and isolated, now stood united. They were a reminder of the strength of humanity, the power of courage, and the enduring spark of hope that could survive even on the harshest world.